don't think this, there we go. I just want to take a moment to review a couple of the things that we talked about last week. These are fundamental for you to understand in your head before they will ever get to your heart. First question we asked last week is, what is faith? Romans 4 tells us that, and it is being fully persuaded that the promises of God that he has made to you are true for you. You have some verses underneath there. Mark 11 is the famous passage where Jesus curses the fig tree, and the next day they're walking back the opposite direction on the road, and the disciples notice that the fig tree is withered. They ask about it, and the answer that Jesus gives seems completely fractured. He says, have faith. Excuse me, I was talking about the fig tree, and you're talking about faith. The answer to that story is this, that if we have even a small inclination towards exercising and having faith, being fully persuaded that what God has spoken is true, it will be done for us. Matthew 16, verse 19, one of the disciples is told that he would be given the keys of the kingdom. Of the kingdom, not to the kingdom. He's already in the kingdom. He's a member of the family of God. He's a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. But once he's in that castle, so to speak, there are lots of doorways and hallways that need to be explored, opened up, and Jesus will give you the keys to get into all those rooms and hallways once you're in the kingdom. I adjure you again this evening that if you are not in the kingdom, if you have not accepted the life and the death of Jesus Christ and his resurrection proving things that he said and did, if you have not accepted those on behalf of your standing before God, that you do so. Until you are brought into the kingdom of heaven, are a citizen of that kingdom, and a child in God's family, the resources of that family and that kingdom are not at your disposal. The principles may not, cannot work in your life. John 14:14 says this striking statement. Jesus says that the disciples have not asked anything up to that point, but they will. And he then goes on to say, you may ask anything in my name, and it will be done for you, so the Father may be glorified. That's a striking statement. Why is it that we have the right, the possibility to ask anything? 1 John 5:14 tells us the answer to part of the answer to that. We have this confidence, John tells us, that if we ask anything according to his will, it will be done for us. We know that if he hears us, we know that we already have received whatever it is that we have asked. Does this mean you can ask for anything? No. It means that you need to be tied to Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face. See what he brings to your life: flourishing, forgiveness, grace, not being stuck in our past mistakes and in our ignorance, but having a way out, not just for heaven, not just for the future, but for right now, this very moment. These are striking statements, and we need to be fully persuaded, no doubt, no other place to go and stand just in case that promise of God doesn't turn out to be true. Fully persuaded is what faith is. Can I get the next screen? I don't know why this thing doesn't seem to work. Okay. How does faith work? Hebrews 11 and 2 Peter chapter 1 verses 3 and following tell us how it works. God has given us everything we need for life and for godliness. He has done this based on his character and his power, his ability to do what he is promising for you and for me. And those things are articulated for us in the promises that he has made to us. A little further on, a couple of verses later in 2 Peter 1, it says that we may participate in the divine nature. We may have the authority of Jesus, of God himself, changing our circumstances. The dominion of the kingdom of heaven can come and be the dominion here in this world, the authority over our lives, the power in our lives, if only we choose to accept what God tells us about our needs and having them resolved. We need to get away from moving from the principle of I have it in my head and I can spit the words out to I experience this every day in the smallest of things in your life. I will tell you this, if you do not experience the power of God and the promises of God, if you do not claim those promises we looked at just a moment ago, plus others, in the small things in your life, in the apparently insignificant, meaningless things, you will have a very difficult time in trusting the most important things of your life to God. You'll have no experience to vouchsafe that. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is available to you. We need to go from intellectual understanding to experiential power. Can I get the next slide, please? Quick thing on this. Again, this is one of the things we talked about last week. 2 examples. Asking is not about us. It's about being in the will of God. It's about meeting Jesus face to face and wanting what he wants through us. God has chosen each one of us to be the building blocks of his kingdom in this world. You might recall that we talked about Abraham. Got a promise from God, took 25 years to answer that promise, and the chapter 4 of Romans, where we read that he was fully persuaded, that was him exercising his faith, believing, coming into agreement with the promise that God had made to him, in spite of the fact that he sat there and thought about it and analyzed it and said, this isn't even possible. But his faith did not waver. Talked about Mary very briefly. When the angel came and said to her that she was blessed, and God had plans for her, and she'd been chosen amongst so many other possible people. And that blessing that he was bringing was that she would be branded as an adulteress. And her answer to this, which didn't make any sense, God's blessing me, but he's going to make me an adulteress in the eyes of my entire family and my neighborhood. Her answer to this was, be it unto me according to your word. Our prayer needs to be it unto me in my circumstance, as bad as it seems, as impossible to fix as it seems. God, I will do what you ask me to do, even if it makes no sense, even if it looks like I will be the one who loses in this transaction. Turn your eyes to Jesus and look at his face. Can I get the next screen, please? Okay. I gave you this quick illustration last week as well. There is power available. The electricity's on. But for these lights to be illuminating our experience tonight, we need to have the switch flipped. We don't turn the switch, there's no electricity that turns these lights on. It might be right there at the end of the room, the end of that wire where the switch breaks it. But it's not getting into the need that we have. So we need to do that. Can we get the next slide, please? Okay. Faith life now, practicing the kingdom to create kingdom resources. You are called to prosper so that the kingdom of God may extend its dominion amongst all of the people and circumstances that your life touches. Deuteronomy 28:8 promises you this. The Lord will send a blessing on your barns and on everything you put your hand to. The Lord will bless you in the land that he is giving you. I suggest you memorize this verse if you don't know it. It's a foundational point of view when you wonder what it is that God's trying to accomplish. And ask the question, why do I not see God doing great things in my life. Can I have the next slide? Okay. We looked at this last week. We read chapter 4 of Hosea, where we're told that people willfully turned away from what God had made known to them, what he had disclosed to them. And that lack of knowledge, not going to listen to God, I'm going to turn over here and listen to Satan. Same thing that Adam and Eve did. That is what will kill your life, your ability to prosper. It will kill the possibility that the dominion of heaven can come and exert influence over your circumstance, your problem, your life. Next slide, please. Okay, 4 things. If you want to be able to occupy the promised land, if you want to take possession and experience the promises that God has made to you, you need to become informed. You need to know what the scriptures say. That means, at the very least, memorizing a few verses that the Holy Spirit can bring to your mind when Satan is trying to distract you or get you to focus on some difficult circumstance. You need to make a decision to occupy your territory, to take the things that the scriptures tell you and declare are yours, the weapons of this war that we have, the spiritual conflict. And you need to stop choosing, as the Jews did, to live in the wilderness for 40 years. They took a 14-day walk and turned it into a 40-year nightmare. Most people do that. I'll tell you why in the money business in just a moment. And lastly, I emphasize again, you need to be fully persuaded. You need to practice and to exercise your faith. As you develop capacity, God will bless you and others through you. He will provide for your needs. He will bring the kingdom of heaven to be the light in your life that other people can look and see and be attracted to. Next slide, please. Okay, a couple of myths. We're going to get into some practical stuff here. Everyone think that they should own a home? Haven't we been told that? Right? Got to have a home. Do you know how many times people pay for their house on average before they have technical ownership of it? If you bought a house that was $500,000 and you mortgaged it, as most people in this country do for 25 or 30 years, you will pay at least 4 times that $500,000. That means you're paying $2 million for a $500,000 home. Now, if we knew it was going to cost $2 million and it was a $500,000 purchase, would we actually spend 300% more? Probably not. But when we take mortgages, and we do this over 25 or 30 years, that is exactly what we do. The money goes nowhere except to the bank. They get wealthy. They make a living off of it. And I would make this a little more pointed for you, that every dollar you pay on a mortgage in this country, on a residential mortgage, is in after-tax dollars. If you're earning enough money to be paying $4,000 a month for mortgages, which lots of people do, you're likely in a 50% tax bracket. So if your mortgage is $4,000 a month, that's $48,000 a year, and that means that you had to earn pre-tax $96,000 just to pay for a house 4 times over. Houses are not to be investments. They are to be places to live. I will tell you, and I'll go through some of this in a few minutes, you have the opportunity, you have the resources available to you not to take a mortgage when you buy your first house. Let me say it again. You do not have to take a mortgage to buy your first house. The bank will tell you otherwise. Your family's probably told you otherwise. Everyone you know, for the most part, has had a mortgage. I can tell you not everybody has had a mortgage, though. Myths, houses are investments. Okay, second myth, you need debt to succeed. I disagree. Anyone here have a credit card balance? Doesn't matter if it's $1 or $1 million. Anybody got a credit balance on their monthly statement? Okay. If you don't use that credit card again, and you pay the minimum required payment every month, how long do you think it will take you to pay it off? I gave you the answer. 20 years. Now, I ask you again, who's getting rich? The banks, not you. And again, I tell you, this is after-tax dollars. Okay, third myth, life insurance is useless to me until I die, and then somebody else gets the benefit. Not true. There are kinds of life insurance that function like that only have a death benefit, that look after some risk or problem that might be created in your death. But there are kinds of life insurance that will allow you to borrow money and pay yourself the interest. All the while, the value of that account is growing at about 7% a year. It will give you a retirement income. I brought this with me. This is from a client. This guy's 40 years old, owns no life insurance. I got this is a very expensive plan. This is a whole life insurance. He pays for this for 8 years and never pays for it again. Okay? Now the cost in this illustration is about $20,000 a year. When he turns 65, so he's 40 now, 65, he will have cash equal to $320,000. He will have a paid up value that he can access of $706,000, and it will be making a payment to him every year, starting in that first year, of $8,685. The next year it goes to $8,900, the next year to $11,900, then $15,900, $21,187. That's a life insurance contract. Those are guaranteed numbers. Life insurance is one of the myths that we have been told to believe. Risk. Can't afford to take any risk. This is another myth. Everything has risk. I gave you an example within the last couple of weeks of a client in the States, was retiring, didn't want to take any risk, so he had to have something that was guaranteed. What's more guaranteed than something that's issued a credit statement from the federal government? Unless the government goes out of business, they're going to pay him back, right? He had this alternative of investing in the stock market. He chose not to because the stock market goes up and down and it's very risky, and he didn't want anything to do with that. 10 years in, he had used up all of his retirement capital because the bonds from the government were not paying him enough money to live on every year. So he had to withdraw some of the principal that he had saved up before he retired. So 10 years in, he gets to a place where his bank account, his investments, the total value of the bonds, the risk-free thing, the safe thing, was at zero. Now, if he's looking forward to the next 10 years, do you think that looked very safe? Doubtful. I can tell you he didn't think it was a happy place to be. Risk is a purely subjective thing. Understand what the choices are, make the wisest one you can, and do it for the long term. Next myth, you have to look after yourself first. I cannot tell you how many people, and probably this is more endemic in my generation than in younger generations, that they have to look after themselves. Cannot afford to get to retirement and not have enough money to be totally self-sufficient. Don't have to rely on my kids. Don't have to rely on anybody else. Don't have to go to the church family I belong to and say, I'm having a tough month. I'm having trouble putting food on the table. Could you help me out? Or I lost some money in a scam. Could you help me out? We've been trained not to go and ask. We've been told that it's a sign of weakness and silliness and our stupidity if we get in a circumstance where we have trouble. But what if you got in that circumstance because you were generous? Because God said that you should look after other people based on their needs, and He would look after you. See, we have this metric, this myth that says if you have a problem, you must have done something badly. You've done something wrong, and I don't want anything to do with you until you fix your problem. Then you can come and we'll talk about whether you get help or not. Okay, those are a couple of things about myths that we need to pay attention to. Can I get the next slide? Okay, these are things that I think are important for you to learn about. Debt, it'll kill you. The Bible says it'll make you a slave. Credit systems and credit scores, everyone lives on these things now. I had a great uncle who worked for CIBC in Markham in the same building, in the same branch, his entire working life. He was the manager. It was a farming community way back then. And when people came in, it's because they didn't have money. They needed a loan. They had no real assets to pledge for it. Their income was farming, so it was up and down. That's pretty insecure. And Uncle Len would lend money to these people based on, I know your character. I know you will do everything you can to repay me, not based on his credit score. Credit scores are this fictitious indexing that banks have made up to tell you that they want to reward you because you're so good at what they're doing. Pardon my cynicism. Okay, mortgages. If you have a mortgage, or you know people who have a mortgage, most everyone starts at 25 years or 30 years in this country. I will tell you that you can reasonably expect to be out of all debt, including a mortgage on your home, in under 10 years without killing yourself. Okay, what do we expect for returns on our investments? Somebody got a number they can tell me what's a good return on an investment you make? You must make some investments, don't you? What do you hope to get on an investment? If you buy a GIC at the bank, what do you get? 3%, 2%, something like that? Savings account, 1% maybe? Okay. All right, can we go to the next slide for a moment? This was a real life illustration I did for somebody a couple of months back. And it was intended to show them that they can make enormous amounts of money in the stock market, and that those monies will be paid to them weekly and or monthly. So I'm just going to go through this for you. These are all exchange traded funds is what they're called. So I'm not recommending these to you. I'm just educating you about what's available out there, and here are some examples. These all happen to be in the United States. The first company, the symbol for it is LFGY. It's about $23 a share. It pays every Friday. They put money in your bank account. Like clockwork. It pays 52 times a year. The annual yield that it gives you is 40%. Now, if you reinvest that little bit they give you every week, that 40% is going to go up because what you earned is now earning the same 40%. The next one, IWMY, it's about $36 a share. It trades on the Russell 2000 index, which is a bunch of 2,000 companies all piled together to give a picture of what the stock market's doing. This trades at $36, I think it's $35 now, and it's paying out 79% per year. It also puts money in your bank account every week. Anybody think that the world owes too much money, that the Canadian government is in debt up to its eyeballs? Provincial government is in debt up to its eyeballs, that your friends and your neighbors and your co-workers are in debt up to their eyeballs? I do. So I'll give you a number to quantify this. Everyone remember the debt crisis back in 2008 when the world almost imploded? Lehman Brothers in the United States went out of business, been there for 100 years. Global sovereign debt, the amount of money owned by governments around the world in 2008 was about $39 trillion. And the government said to you and to me, you need to stop spending money you don't have. This is a debt crisis, and you are the problem. Now, here we are in 2025, and this number is actually a year or so old. How much money do you think sovereign governments around the world are now in debt? Since it was a debt crisis and that was the problem, do you think that they reduced the $39 trillion? No. We're up to $85 trillion. One of the answers to that is to own something that has substance, that can't be taken away digitally, electronically. So I give you an example of this twofold. A couple of years ago with the truckers in Ottawa protesting some government policies, the government had their bank accounts seized without a court order. By the push of a button, people had no access to the money that they had worked hard for. If the government gets a cryptocurrency to replace our fiat money, our dollar bills and coins, they will have even easier task to control your money, to take it away or let you have access to it at the push of a button. So this is a problem. Having something that is tangible like gold or silver is the solution to that. The next one on my list here is GDXY. It's based on gold mining companies index in the United States. It's paying, at this price, it was $15.71 at the time I did this. It was paying 44.5% a year. It pays monthly. Okay? It's now gone up to almost $18 a share because gold is going up in value. So the underlying asset here goes up in value. The next one down is the last one I'll do on this list. It's based on a company called Coinbase in the United States, which is a cryptocurrency company. It's paying 167% a year in money that it puts in your account every month. So, anyone shocked that these things are possible? I will tell you that they are possible and they do work. And if you don't believe me, I'll show you an account that's live to the moment. At the end of the day, I'll show you the illustration account that we use for this. You can see where the deposits come in every Friday or every 19th of the month or every 28th of the month or whatever it might be. Okay, next slide, please. And then I want to move on to some questions if you have them. This is a Canadian stock. It owns 15 financial companies in Canada. All the 5 banks, Power Corp, Great West Life, I forget all of them. 15 of them is all that's in this company. The company cannot pay a dividend unless the value of its holdings is $15 per share of this stuff that you can buy. If it goes under $15, they can't pay you a dividend, which I'll illustrate in just a moment. They can't give you money every month. Otherwise, they give you 10 cents per share in your account every month. Okay, what's it worth? When we first took a position in this, it was just over $4 a share. It's now about $6.50 a share. So there's a good capital gain, but along the way, it's been paying 10 cents. So even at $6.50, it's paying me $1.20, which is somewhere just under 20% a year. Anyone like to get 20% on their money? Would you think your money is working hard? Here's the distinction that the rest of the world doesn't want you to know. It's not how much money you have or how much you have invested. It is how hard what you have invested is working for you. And if you can compound that, if you can take your earnings and put them back in to gain more money, to make the next payment even bigger, it's the 8th wonder of the world happening in your life. Okay, David, you want to come up? I was going to give you handouts today. Unfortunately, my printer died, but I did get started on a couple of things. These are some of the tools that we make available to people. This is called the Financial Alignment Worksheet, assessing your financial alignment. Where do you place your trust? How do you handle giving? Are you stewarding what you've been given wisely? What's your financial mindset? So that's one set. Here's another set that we lead people through, itemizing what their debts are and finding crumbs. You remember the story about feeding of the 5,000 and collecting the 12 baskets? Our lives have crumbs. Those crumbs can pay off your debts. I think I told you this story a couple of weeks ago of a client that couldn't make a payment. And I said to them, you know, you can't put this on a credit card and you can't borrow it on a line of credit or anything like that. They said, well, like, how are we going to pay you? I said, you're not going in debt. We just fixed this problem. We're not going to create it all over again. And she phoned me a couple of days later and said, oh, we have the fee. It came from the crumbs that we had been doing through our series together, educating them, finding things, selling things they didn't need or didn't use, and there was the money. Now, these people aren't Christians, but if that can work, if the principle can be experienced and the power of it in somebody who's not a Christian, imagine what God could do in your life. So I have some of these here. If you want to see them afterwards, please come and tell me. If you want a copy, I can send you the whole series electronically. Okay, I've got a couple of minutes for questions. Anybody have a question, concern, something they're not sure of, something you disagree with what I said? No question is a bad question.
Praise the Lord. Praise